So we've all been through the shock of what happened on Friday afternoon with Brad Marchand getting traded to the Florida Panthers. He was in a Panthers uniform on Monday, well, a Panthers pullover and hat on Monday in his introductory press conference. It was weird to see. They've got the Marchand Panthers jerseys in the pro shop down there in Sunrise. It's odd, right? It's a very odd sight. A lot of Bruins fans were hoping we didn't have to see it. But now we've got some big-time fallout. And now the details are slowly but surely starting to come out here. And I use the term details loosely because now we're getting stories about how this came to be, about how the Boston Bruins traded their captain and future Hall of Famer to an Eastern Conference rival for only a conditional second-round pick. And we're still trying to figure out the details of that condition. It certainly sounds like that Brad Marchand will have to play in 50% of their playoff games through 2 rounds. So not one. You can't just make it 2 games, right? Through 2 rounds in order for that to become a first-round pick in 2028 rather than a second-round pick in 2027. I didn't love the return on the way back. As much as we all didn't want to see Brad Marchand traded, I think a lot of us Bruins fans who have watched this team all season long and have watched this franchise kind of devolve over the last couple of years, we were thinking that's probably a necessary evil to trade Brad Marchand. It's the best trade chip you got. It sucks, but that's what you've got. I think what pissed off some Bruins fans like me was the return that you got. Because every year you see guys around his age, his kind of efficacy, garner a first-round pick. I remember Jerome McGinley doing it when he went to Pittsburgh instead of Boston. A couple years later, the Bruins went out and got 34-year-old Rick Nash. It cost him a first-round pick. So I'm sitting here thinking and watching this seller's market develop on Friday, and I'm like, man, first-round pick and a young player for Brad Marchand. Instead, you got a conditional second, a second that's 2 years away, and a first, if it even comes to that, which you have to root for the Panthers in order to get that first-round pick, is 3 years away. And I don't know about you guys, I'm hoping they're not still rebuilding 3 years from now. The silver lining is the Panthers might not be good at that point with how all in they're going here. That they might kind of crash out a little bit by 2028. And if that is a first-round pick, it'll probably be a pretty good one. But now there's talks of the drama, the background of the extension talks. Elliotte Friedman went out over the weekend, well after the trade deadline, and started to report what he's heard from this situation. And I gotta be honest with you guys, it's still not crystal clear to me.
Just a few more things I wanted to go over from the Marchand situation. Number one, I think the Bruins and the player had agreed on term, 3 years. But as Don Sweeney said yesterday, there was a gap, and there was a gap on AAV. And I don't think he was being asked to take a pay cut or anything like that, but I do think it was a sizable gap that they obviously could not bridge. Where I think this really went sideways was there was a point this week where Brad Marchand, who was currently injured and not in the lineup, asked for a face-to-face meeting with Bruins management. I don't know exactly when it was. I don't know exactly who was there, but it did happen. And in that meeting, Brad Marchand asked for a compromise. He said, I will compromise. I will bend on some of my ask. I'm asking the Bruins to bend on some of their stance, and we'll find a way to get this deal done because he wanted to stay as a Bruin. And it just didn't happen. The Bruins had gone as far as they were willing to go. And look, anybody out here watching hockey in the hockey world has watched Brad Marchand play. We know he's going to the Hall of Fame for one major reason. He's got an incredible amount of pride, and he puts everything on the line. I think he was really stung by that, and then all of a sudden the Bruins started to look, okay, we're not going to go any farther. We're going to start looking out there. And I think one of the things that really happened in the last 24 to 48 hours before the deadline was that Marchand's agent, I was told by several teams, Wade Arnott, made it very clear that Marchand had a place he wanted to go. And obviously that was Florida, and in the last minutes the Bruins acquiesced and made the deal. But so that's everything I understand there. And I think it really hurt Marchand that the face-to-face meeting couldn't get a deal done.
So a couple takeaways there. First thing, very vague. And Elliotte Friedman is plugged in more than anybody basically in the NHL. Like, he is the Schefter of the NHL. He's the insider. He has the 21 hours of screen time on trade deadline day. And for him to be kind of that vague about it, it's like, all right, well, then we're missing a side of the story here. And of course, it makes the Bruins look terrible. And that's the social media reaction over the weekend. Bruins fans just skewering management for cheaping out on a future Hall of Famer and your team captain. So let's address that part first. This is where it becomes very, very vague. Friedman says there's a sizable gap. Now, from that report that we're hearing there, I don't think he's getting this information from the Bruins, okay? I don't think he's getting this information from the team because it makes the team look terrible. So he's getting that information from Brad Marchand's agent. And what is sizable? Apparently the two sides came to an agreement on 3 years. Bruins originally wanted to do 2 years. The guy's 36. He's going to turn 37 in May. So they had agreed 3 years, but sizable gap in AAV. Is that $500,000? That's pretty sizable to me. $1.5 million? That's still pretty sizable to me. Maybe not to Brad Marchand. $3 million, doubling the AAV basically. What is sizable? Marchand's basically getting paid about $3 million. And a guy his same age in the division, Claude Giroux, at a slightly more important position, slightly, center. Claude Giroux, same age, getting paid about $6 million. I think it was a 3-year, $19 million deal with Ottawa. And a little bit less take home than what that contract would be in Boston. A little bit different. Not by that much. So is Brad Marchand trying to double his AAV? Is he trying to get $1 million more, $500,000 more? I think that's important to know what the actual figures are. Not trying to carry the water for Boston Bruins management that I've been skewering all season long, but it is important to know what that change is, what that difference is, that gap. Because again, we're talking about a contract that's going to sign a guy through age 39. We all really love Brad Marchand. We all love the tradition of the Bruins. We like our guys. But through age 39, that's a tough ask. The Bruins pretty rarely do that. And honestly, this situation, what we're going to find out, is probably not that much different from what the Zdeno Chara and Torrey Krug situations were. And I think in both instances, the Bruins were right, even at the time when it was tough. I think both times they were right to let both those guys walk. The difference was the Bruins were Stanley Cup contenders then. They weren't going to trade them at the deadline. Now they're not Stanley Cup contenders. Who knows what would have happened with Bergeron and Krejci if they weren't literally setting records in those guys' final seasons 2 years ago. But you don't have that luxury now. And Brad Marchand, at the end of that report, it clearly sounds like the Bruins were trying to do him something of a solid of like, hey, where do you want to go? And he said the Florida Panthers. He said the team that you've been competing with and lost to in the playoffs the last 2 years. He went with he wanted to be teammates with the guy that sucker punched him and knocked him out of a couple games in the postseason last year. That was a Brad Marchand decision from that report, which is probably coming from Marchand's people. I'm still pissed at the return that they got. I still think it could have been better, even for a 36-year-old who's hurt right now. But we need some more details on what the background actually was. But taking this at face value, what we're hearing from Elliotte Friedman right now, one thing that sticks out pretty clearly to me, I don't think he's coming back. I think he's pretty hurt here, and that's why the Bruins got fleeced on this deal. But the second thing is, from the rhetoric that we're hearing here, doesn't sound like he's clamoring to come back in the summer, which I thought was a real possibility. That he would get traded, go somewhere, and that because the asking price was lower than we thought, then that would mean that he would come and sign back here in the summer. But after hearing this, I think there's beef here. I think there's bad blood. I think there's Brad Marchand saying, me and the stars of this team have taken pay cuts for years. I was criminally underpaid at the back end of my prime. I think is what he's saying. You know, he was one of the best value contracts in the NHL for years. And he's looking and he's saying, my buddy Patrice Bergeron took a hometown discount. Zdeno Chara took a hometown discount. David Krejci, Tuukka Rask. These guys took hometown discounts to be core members of the Bruins. We could keep this thing together. And now my teammates like David Pastrnak, Charlie McAvoy, Jeremy Swayman, they ain't taking hometown discounts. That ship has long since sailed. Pastrnak, over 11 million. Charlie McAvoy, 9.5. Jeremy Swayman, 8.25. Had won one playoff series. Here I am, the captain, Stanley Cup winner, future Hall of Famer. And I can't get 5. I can't get 6. That's why it's important to know what the number is. But I think he was done taking hometown discounts. And he ain't coming back to the Bruins for a hometown discount. Someone will give him some money. You know, no one's going to give him $8 million, but someone with the cap going up can give him $6 million. That wouldn't stun me at all. The way we saw Jerome McGinley after he left, to bring up Jerome McGinley for the second time, after he left the Bruins in 2014, he got a 3-year deal in Colorado. Like someone around a similar age, I think he was 36, 37. Someone will do something like that. And I don't think Brad Marchand wanted to leave the Bruins. You know, his kids are in school in Massachusetts. They love the area. I think that would be the only pull back right now. But these guys, they like playing in Florida, man. A lot of guys like playing in Florida. So, yeah, I think the Bruins got fleeced here. But I also think it's important to know what the ask was, because we still don't know what that is. Before we act, like it falls right into line the narratives we've heard for a long time about Bruins management. And I certainly don't want to be sticking up for Cam Neely and Don Sweeney, who I think have put the team into this mess. I don't want to give them a free pass here. But it is important to know what the numbers were, rather than just, they can't treat him like this. It is a business. And again, it wasn't the vacuum of trading Brad Marchand. It was, yeah, a lot of fans didn't like seeing him go to the Panthers. And a lot of fans like me thought they got fleeced on what they got in return. And now fans are going to be pissed at the supposed treatment of Brad Marchand. We just have to wait this out. I know that's not a good sports radio take, but until we hear some numbers here, it's tough to pass a ton of judgment on this one.